Thank you for joining. So welcome everybody, General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group bi-weekly sync on Thursdays, 7 a.m. Pacific. We know that this might be a hard time for Pacific people to join, but it is a balance between APAC, Europe, and US, trying to balance the right timing. This is January 10th, 2019 edition, so now that it's actually fixed. And today we are actually using a new template, a new structure on the slides. And let me actually, now that I'm shuffling this slightly, let me do one more thing and move that one on that screen, and we are on to go. So we are moving into using the new TIL branding, even though technically our brand division and brand people are still saying that we should not yet use the TIL because they're working on a small general guidance on that one. But hey, we'll apologize and we'll move on. Now, that's the PMP way of doing stuff. Now, before we go to the actual content and the agenda, if you're interested on participating on the community, let me enable my screen. Sorry, my clicker, so we get things moving. There are multiple ways of participating on the SharePoint Dev community. So if you're looking into, for example, being an MVP in the future, or if you're an MVP, you need to actually prove that you're contributing for the community. And these community calls and the SharePoint Dev community is an awesome opportunity for you to do so. So you're able to volunteer to do a demo or a technical pattern demonstration in this course, and we will actually clip that demo out of the calls as well and publish that as a separate video using then our social media channels. You can absolutely contribute on GitHub. We have multiple open source projects which we are actively working on, and the main thing is always to provide feedback. If nothing else, if you feel that something isn't working properly and Microsoft should improve something, please use, for example, the IM window chat in this course to let us know. Everything is getting recorded, and we actually want your input around, especially on the SharePoint topics in this course. So if you have some feedback around Windows or something else, that's not necessarily the right, this is not the right forum to do that. Anyway, now agenda of the day. So we're introducing a slightly different agenda for these calls as well, to have some level of additional structure. So we will have a one-slide summaries always for PMPC, some core extension changes, PMP PowerShell changes, and modernization tooling changes. Then we have our recurrent list formatting tip section here, which is always done by Chris Kent. And then Chaks has actually promised that he will prioritize his time more in the future, so he would be here more often to do either Microsoft Flow or Power Apps demos in the context of SharePoint. So Chaks is one of the PMs responsible of the Flow and Power Apps integration in the SharePoint side, and he then demonstrates those functionalities. And then as a final demo today is from Matti, which is actually a really cool demo. It is using out-of-the-box capabilities, kind of. So integrating your SharePoint Online to Dynamics 365 and presenting the data from Dynamics using modern chart web part with the help of Microsoft Flow. Sounds complicated, but it's actually quite easy to do, and Matti will walk the process through, which is pretty cool. So let's actually get on going on the slides. So now we are also cleaning up a lot of the, let's say, the repeating slides and combining them to be a one-slider. So we're trying to make the intros in this course much shorter. So there will be more time on the Q&A, more time on the demos in the future as well. But certain things which we want to keep here always is that reminders on things. AKMS SB DevDocs, official documentation for SharePoint developer documentation. MSDN has been shut down in the context of SharePoint already. SharePoint Dev videos, in here we're releasing all of the recordings. So if you miss one of these calls, or you missed the Tuesday call where Sean Squires and Melissa Torres were showing cool stuff related on upcoming branding stuff, you can always go to our video channel and have a look on what has happened and what was the newest videos which has been released related on SharePoint developer topics. And then SharePoint developer issues, AKMS SB Dev issues. If you're running into API issues, developer topic issues, please go here, let us know. We'll have a look on that as soon as possible. If your issue is, however, related on out-of-the-box functionalities, like out-of-the-box web part doesn't work properly or something else, then that is not the right forum. We're unable to help you through the issue list if it's an out-of-the-box capability. So anything on development, we can actually help you there. Now, moving on things. So one thing what we actually talked about 2 weeks ago, and this is now getting to relatively final status. So we are looking into releasing a SharePoint Dev mascot, and this is already pretty, I think this is a version 6 or 7 out of the internal versions, what we're looking into doing. And we're not going to change it is a porcupine. And we've been cleaning the mascot in a certain way, but it's going to be looking pretty much like this one. So it has the green, teal, green shirt by default, and it has the orange trousers as well. And this is something what we've been working on together with our design team. So there are smart people in our design team responsible of the modern SharePoint. And obviously we know that somebody might be thinking that, well, why do you use time on these things? Well, and not fix the bugs. Sure, there's bugs as well, and we need to fix those, and we will fix those. But every now and then work has to have some fun as well. And this is basically something which we are introducing because our marketing doesn't want us to use a SharePoint Dev logo, or they don't want to introduce SharePoint Framework logo. So we're going to use our own mascot then in our messaging. So just for smiles and just for fun. We don't have to be super official and strict every single time. Now, but if you have good ideas and good suggestions related on naming, those would be more than welcome. We're looking into something which is really generic, so you can always provide the suggestions using the Twitter feeds as well. I probably should tweet this as a separate suggestion that community can actually decide, or at least offer suggestions related on the naming of this person. Now, still work in process. We will absolutely release this officially at some point, I think relatively soon, because we want to use it already in the spring in numerous different ways. But thank you for the suggestions already in our window. Just some good ones over there, absolutely. Now, like I said, we will have one sliders related on PnP System Core, PnP PowerShell, and the modernization tooling in these calls from this call forward. So bi-weekly going through what has happened here. Just out of curiosity, we didn't agree on this one. Bert, do you want to walk this through, or how do we want to do this? Are you?
Yeah, I can quickly walk them through.
Cool.
So for the PnP System Core library, listing the new things which are in the release, which will come out pretty soon. So you usually have the release already done, aligned with the community call, the monthly call. And now with holiday season, we needed some more time. So next week the release will be there, and it will have improved throttling handling. So there's new guidance and new system APIs, by the way, to handle throttle in the right way. A working implementation. The previous implementation actually never worked, so that's fixed.
So let's quickly on that one, sorry for jumping quickly. What does it mean is that if your code is getting throttled, there is a way on dealing that exception gracefully, right?
Correct. You can now, it waits, and if it then succeeds on a second or a third or fourth call, your code still works. In the past, it waited, and then when it returned, the code blew up because the context object was kind of messed up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think that's a really important thing just to clarify on the
Oh yeah. Furthermore, we did some work on the modern page API, support for section backgrounds, which is in targeted release right now, and support for the new upcoming first-party web parts as well. And there's an extension method to reset a file to a previous version, which there's also a PowerShell method coming for that one as well. Looking forward, I think that one of the big things is schema support, a new schema essentially, because there's a pretty big backlog of things that we want to include in the schema. So we plan to at least have the schema ready for the next version.
And maybe on that, just to be mentioned, and this is repeating on, we talked about this one a few times, but we're looking into having, for example, Microsoft Teams channel creation support in the schema, also Flow and Power Apps integration in the schema. So it's no longer just SharePoint specific provisioning templates. It is actually Office 365 tenant scoped provisioning templates in the future.
Yes. And if you have ideas that you want to get in, there is the provisioning repository, schema provisioning repository, where you can create an issue and then we can pick it up and use it as an ID for the next version of the schema. Yep. And then the last thing is, and this has been on the list for quite a while. I think SharePoint 2019 support plus on-premises related updates. There's a series of pending PRs around on-premises, which we could not merge, but now we agreed on I think it's the May version, Vesa, to move to the May version of SharePoint 2013 and 2016 binaries, so which have more kind of parity across them, which will make it easy for us to finally get those PRs processed and also include SharePoint 2019 support. Will it be fully ready for the next drop?
Debatable.
Try, but I'm not guaranteeing that to be sure, but we're looking into that at least.
We have quite a few other high priorities on the table right now, so we'll try to make this happen. Right now, I'm going to move on the slides. So let's go to the PnP PowerShell next. Where is my? There we go. So PnP PowerShell. So what's new here?
So PnP PowerShell. We have a new commandlet to reset a file version, so you can use this commandlet to go back to a previous version of a file. The convert to PnP clients that page, so the commandlet that actually takes a classic wiki page and builds a modern page out of it. It was announced, included actually in previous release, but it was quite slow. We did a lot of work to make it faster, so it's double as fast, even triple depending on the scenario. So that should really help folks using this to modernize pages. And I do know that some folks on the call are actually using this a lot, so this will help them. And there is additional support for special characters in files and folders. And next thing was coming is more commands. So what else? Meaning?
yeah. So please give us feedback. And obviously, a lot of the new commands actually are contributions by the community in the PnP PowerShell. So thank you for your contributions around these things. Now, the next thing, which is super close to Bert's heart. Bert is active on all of these things, but this is really your newest baby, is the modernization tooling. So what's new here?
So the modernization framework, the one containing all the logic around modernization, so that one got the performance improvements that I just talked about for the PowerShell. So the PowerShell is using this framework to do its actual work, and this kind of creating a modern version of a classic page now is way more faster. We added support for additional first-party clients and web parts. They're not yet in the transformation model, but if someone wants to add them, they can be added because it's supported. Going forward, there will be a beta release of the page transformation UI. So at the right side, you see the ribbon button, create modern version. So that's the page transformation UI, and that is currently in preview. There will be a new beta coming out within less than 2 weeks, which, for example, have the performance improvements, and also it will have additional banners. So when you modernize a page, your classic page now will have a banner saying like, hey, there's a modern version of this page. You might want to go over there. So that will help folks on discovering the modern page. The second big component in modernization tooling is the scanner. So V2.3 is out already. Doesn't have that many new things. The biggest things are...
Sorry, Bert. Don't assume that people know what is a modernization.
Yeah, sorry. So the modernization scanner is a tool that you can run, a command line tool, or that actually scans your environment, scans your tenant, helps you assess how good are you doing on modern lists and libraries, how good are you prepared for Group Connect, how good are you prepared for using modern pages, even we have a component talking about publishing portals. Are you ready to start transforming publishing portals into modern communication sites? So the scanner does a lot of checking and gets you a lot of data, and then it generates Excel dashboards to make it easier for you to consume the data. And that has been around for quite a while already, so it's more than 1.5 years, I think, nowadays. So it's pretty mature. Version 2.3 is out currently. It has a check for new versions. So essentially, if I release 2.4 next week, you will get notified there's 2.4, and you have an option to download it. So that will help folks on using the latest version. And one pretty big new thing is there is some, we consolidated all the guidance around modern list and libraries. So today, if you have turned off modern list and libraries at tenant level, you might have done that because you had some cases where you could not use modern list and libraries, and you turned it off fully for everyone. If you want to turn it on in a way that you enable it for the places where it makes sense, but then disable model list and libraries for those particular sites where there is some issue. It was quite hard because you had to look at the scan results and kind of collect them yourself and do all the work. Now we have kind of streamlined that process, so the scanner will output a separate file listing all the site collections that have a potential issue with modern list and libraries, and then there's a special script, a PowerShell script, a PP PowerShell script, that you can use to just feed in that CSV file and will opt out those particular site collections for modern list and libraries, which then allows you to turn it on at tenant level. So that will make that process easier. And going forward, I think performance improvements is on my radar currently, so I'm looking into that.
Now, Bert, there's a discussion on the IAM window. The lower link doesn't work. AKMS SPPMP page transformation does not.
Page transformation UI it should be then. Sorry.
Okay. So it's missing a UI in the end. Okay. Yeah, so we'll update that on a slide, and somebody can share that in the IAM window as well. Now, okay. So cool. And then we'll head to our bi-weekly recurrent section, right, Chris? You have something new and cool for us to show related on view formatting.
Betcha.
Only one this time. Only one time this time. So
only one tip.
Yes.
But it's a good one. All right. Let me share my screen.
Yep.
Someone can just let me know when you've got it. That'd be great.
No, not gonna happen. Of course. Still loading on my side. Eric already got it.
Okay. All right. Well,
wait a
second.
second. Well, we want to get it recorded, so I want to make sure that I got it.
Gotcha.
Sure, and I got it. So, all good.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Kent. I'm an Office Development MVP and a member of the core team. And again, I'm going to show you another exciting list formatting quick tip. All right. This tip can be used in both column formatting and view formatting. But I'm going to show you in column formatting. However, this tip is going to be an Office 365 only tip. It's not going to work in SharePoint 2019 on-premise. Okay, so let's take a look. So it's pretty common that you want to reference local resources within your format, whether that's a link and you're trying to set that href attribute, right, to link to either a list that's on the site or a specific library, or if it's an image, right, where you're trying to link to those images that are stored directly inside a document library. Right, so there's two options in the past, and these are the only two options that are available to SharePoint 2019. You can do a hard-coded URL. That's where you're going to put that whole tenant URL, and you're going to put it all the way to your site, and then you're going to build the link that way. So the nice thing about this is it's always going to work. Yeah, is it bad? It is bad, Joel. It's bad. All right, but it's not reusable cross-site. So if you want to grab that format, right, and some of these formats can get kind of complicated. You don't want to be going back and manually editing, your formulas that have created these links. So it's just not reusable. And again, hard-coded, we don't want that. So the other option is a relative URL. This is where you're going to do like a ////. We'll show you a couple examples of that. Nice thing about this, it's reusable across sites, but it's super dependent on the relative location that the format is rendered, which sounds a little weird. I'll show you what I mean. But it makes it pretty fragile. So what do you do instead? And that's what I'm going to show you. It's @current_web. This is a brand new magic string or special string or token, whatever term you want to use. But the nice thing about using this is it's the same as getting that web absolute URL. One thing to note, it does not end with a slash, so provide the slash yourself. So let's take a look. What does that mean? What does that actually look like? So if we go to our standard Warrior Horses site here, now let's say I've got my warrior horses, we're preparing for battle, but I'm trying to organize what kind of horse gear do we have to fight in our battles. So I've got this nice gear list over here, right? Now, I've got my gear, I got a jetpack, I got orange slices, whatever it is, and I want to rate it on the level of evilness, right, of my gear. So I've got that here, and then I've got a list to help plan things, right? So you can go to the navigation, but this is boring. So let's take a look at some of our options. So the first one is a link, right? So if we take a look at a format here, and these are samples that are available on our repo, which I'll give you the link for that in just a little bit here. So if I go for the hard-coded route, right? So if you take a look at this, it's pretty simple. It's just generating a link, right? And I'm setting that href. I'm building it. I'm sending it to whatever the current field is, so the name of that list, right? But I've got my whole tenant URL in here. And that works, right? So I'm going to grab that and I copy that and I go back. All right, and I'm going to format this thing, format this column, and I just paste it in there. All right, and if I preview that, right, that works. So I can actually click that, it opens up. There we go. All that works, that's great, but if I try and use that anywhere else, we're no good, right? So the other option is I do a relative link. All right, so I grab this thing, and you can see I've got ... because I know I'm already in the list when I'm rendering within the list view. I can do that, and that'll work as well. So I come back in here and grab that, and paste that. We'll preview that, and if I actually take a look, right, so if I open up my dev tools and I inspect what actually got generated there, you'll see it's literally doing the ... So it's relying on your browser to understand where it is in the structure of the site. So again, that will work. So if I click these things, you know, we get the link, it opens up just fine. So if you're always rendering with a list view, that's not a problem. This becomes super obvious, however, when you start dealing with images. So if we take a look at images, I'm going to skip over, let's see, let me grab the right thing here. So if we go to our images, where's the image one? Right here. So I've got a hard-coded image. So in this one, I've got my evilness, right? All I'm doing is setting that source, right, and I'm building a PNG based on that choice field. Just because I've got a folder in my shared documents library, again, this will work. You know, that'll work everywhere until I try and reuse that. And if I do the same thing with a relative one, right, we can see this. So I've got a ... It gets a little complicated trying to figure out where are we relative, you know, to the folders. But I can grab that, and we'll see if I come in here and I'm going to format this column instead. Right, so let's go to column settings, format this column. You notice I've got this nice new option here for choice columns. I'm going to say advanced mode. All right, so I can paste the format directly, paste that in, and preview that, and actually save that. All right, so now I've got, you know, these evilness scale badges, very exciting. Let's get rid of this thing. But if I come over here to a regular pair or a nested page, right, that's going to work. So nested just means it's at the same level. I've put this in a folder. All right, so I've got a little folder. If we can see it here, let's see if we can zoom in there. So you got warrior pages, site pages, special. So I've got a folder, so it's at the same level, so it just happens to kind of work out right now. But what about a regular page where I've got this on here? If I refresh this, oh gosh, it's broken, and I'm so sad, right? So the point is, the format, which I think is working just great over here, actually breaks dependent upon where it's rendered. We don't want that. That's terrible, right? So we could go the hard-coded route, but again, once we try and reuse that, maybe we're using that as part of our provisioning, we're trying to put that across sites, that's going to require manual intervention in our format, and that's terrible. So, good news! We've got this whole other thing here, which is called the local image format. We can use this token. So you'll see right here, this @current_web. So if I just build it with that, so I say @current_web, and then I provide my own slash, again, the current web does not end in a slash, I can point it to shared documents, evilness. I build that string the exact same way, but I'm no longer putting my tenant in there, and I'm not putting my very specific site in there. So let's grab that guy and go back in there. Where we got? There we go. Go back to our gear list. All right, I've still got this open. I'm going to copy all that. I'm going to delete it, paste my new one. I'm going to save that. You'll see it still works here just fine. If I go to we'll go to my nested page. We'll see. Well, it still works there. Now we go to my regular page. It works! Oh my gosh! So here's the point. The point is use @current_web whenever you can. Get rid of all of your relative or hard-coded links, whether that's your links or your image sources. Anytime you're trying to reference something on the site, use that @current_web. It's going to make a huge difference for you. And that's the whole tip. Oh, and last thing here are some resources for you. So you always get the full documentation. There is an update. There's a pull request for an update to make sure @current_web is documented. And then, of course, these samples are out there. And here's a blog post that goes into a little more detail about all of that and what's available with the current web. Okay? All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to move in back on my screen for a second, and then we'll move the Chaks after that. So awesome tips. So, and like you saw from last week, and we are now starting to actually split this video. So obviously, this particular video and the tip will be released as a separate video starting from tomorrow as well. So you don't only get the recorded community call, you will get the individual tips as an individual videos. And we'll probably, by the way, Chris should be creating then a own playlist in the SharePoint Dev YouTube channels where people can actually find your tips in the future. So that would probably make a lot of sense. Now, okay, let's move on the agenda. So we have then 2 demos coming up. So first, Chaks related on the reminder flow, related on creating a reminder flow for SharePoint, and then Matti after that related on integrated modern chart web part with dynamic 365 data using Microsoft Flow. Let's move between you guys directly. So let's not jump back on the slides in between. But Chaks, I think it's good for you to take it away, and hopefully the audio and everything else is working. Good to have you back, by the way. Yep, all good.
Excellent. Boy, after a long time coming back to these calls.
You've been so busy. That's fine.
Yeah. So now I'll be regular, so I'm happy that I can show all the awesomeness that we're doing with Flow and Power Apps. So to start with, I don't have any slides. I'm just going to give some announcements that I did in Twitter, and it was also in blogs and other stuff. So page approvals, the modern page approvals, so if you wanted governance on approving, reviewing, and rejecting pages, so that's rolled out 100% to all tenants. So if you go to a com site or any team site and go to the pages library, you should be able to look at that and configure the page approvals. And the other thing that we rolled out to first release tenants, it is a targeted release, is the super easy way to create personal reminders based off a date column in SharePoint. So we all know that SharePoint lists, for example, over here, have several things, right? List and document libraries have, like, for example, here, contracts, there's a renewal date. And most of the time, sometimes personally for yourself, you would want to get reminded about a contract before 2 days or 3 days. So an easy way to do that, of course, you can go build your flow, but we wanted to make it even easier so we could suggest different things based off of the column metadata you have here. So now in targeted release, if you go to a list or library that has a date column, not the modified, but custom date columns, and you bring down the flow menu, you will see a new option called set a reminder. So this is a contextual option that comes up only if you have a custom date column. And it will list all of the date columns you have. So here in this case, I have a contract renewal date. And as soon as I click this, you can see I get the flow menu.
Chaks, I wasn't actually aware that you're planning to share anything. You're not sharing anything. We're still saying my
hang on. Skype.
Yeah, I think everybody missed that you're actually demoing something except now. So good.
Skype actually said it couldn't share when I shared.
Okay,
so now
it makes sense.
Share.
Now it's starting. So.
Excellent. So yeah, so I was.
One second, let's confirm. Andy got it. I haven't got it yet. It's arriving, and there we go. I got it. Cool.
Okay. So if you go to my Twitter feed, you'll see both the announcements, page approvals, and reminder flows. That's what I was initially showing. And then I will just refresh this page just so we are clear. So here I'm going to show you the reminder flow demo. So reminder flow is a pretty something that I quite like. Based off of the columns, so you can see a contract renewal date, and if you now open the flow menu, you will see that you have a new option called set a reminder, contract renewal date. This only appears if you have a date column, custom date column. If you don't have a custom date column, this set a reminder option would not appear in your list or library. So it's very contextual, and it's basically trying to suggest something to the user that you can do some actions using flow. So now as soon as I do that, I'm going to get the option to create a flow. So I can just change the title to be relevant to whatever I want. Remind me this many days, so I can obviously put 5 or 2, let's put 1, the default, and then click create. So now this will create a flow for myself. and it will basically be set up to ensure that it can remind you a day before if any contract is due. So now immediately got an email because the flow got created. It at least ran once. So if I go to my mail, you can see that I do have one document that is going to be due in a day, and you can see that here, 112. Sorry, not the 112, 111. And I get Norton Traders, and I say, hey, you have one document, to be reminded before the contract renewal date. So it's pretty simple. And if users are very familiar with Flow, they can basically go to their Flow site, and under My Flows, they will see the flow they created. So they have full control of this flow. And by default, this flow runs every day with the recurrence trigger. You can go change the timing, the time zone, however you want this to run, whether it's every day or every month or every week. And then you can see the logic that we use. And it's pretty cool to go and build this, because I think there are some tips and tricks in this flow itself if you want to gather how we build this thing. So the first thing is we capture the input, and then we update it here in the flow in a variable, and then we get the profile to ensure that we know who we are sending this to, and then we create the query using which we can filter the items from the list. So basically we're looking at today plus X days, and then X days plus 1. So we're doing so that we can accommodate date and time, because some columns would also have time along with it. So this is basically trying to do some mathematical calculation to arrive those dates. And then we're getting the list name. So right now this is basically a thing that we have. We can use HTTP request, but I think once we go to full 100%, you will see the template actually not having this action. Rather, we would send it across from SharePoint to Flow. So ignore this for now. And then finally, in the get items, you have the filter query. So the filter query is basically now constructing the REST API query if you want to filter the items based on date. And this is where it gets more complicated, but at least out of the box, if you don't change this action for the user, it's basically, hey, I created this flow, it's working, or is it not working? And then once I get the items, I go through loop, and then for each, I generate get the metadata, and then send a reminder email. Now, one of the things you can see here in apply to each is that I basically use a string variable, and then append it using the table row syntax in HTML, so that then when I actually put the HTML in the email, it will now look very beautiful the way I want it to look, like, for example, over here. So there are some really good tidbits if you want to go look at this flow, how it works, and what we have done. And if you want to send this along, not just to yourself, but to your team, you could do that. If you want to send this to your manager, you got Get My Profile, so you could get that as well, whichever the user manager is. So there are a lot of good things here that we would be improving across the different stages of this flow. So right now, this is what we got with the reminder flow. And this is something, this idea of suggesting flows based off of column type, I think we would do more about this. So for example, if you have a people picker or people column, person column, and you want to remind something to that person when something happens, right? So those kind of scenarios, we're looking at it. So if you have any more scenarios that you have been working across, do let us know. And try this out. Let us know. This is a very small feature, but I feel like this is something that will be very useful. So let us know any feedback you have. And I think when probably a next call, I can go through some advanced topics on page approvals and customizing the page approval flow.
Sounds really good. Now, Chaks, there was a few questions which we definitely need to go through, but you can stay on the screen. I'll ask the questions because we don't want to see your Skype screen. That doesn't make any sense. Let's rather have a look on the beautiful SharePoint, if that's fine. Chaks, listen.
Yep, I'm here.
No. If you can go back on the SharePoint, so we want to see SharePoint. Not. I will ask you the questions, so that's okay. Okay. Now, can we package the workflow into a reusable package and move it in across the sites? Classic question. Where are we with that one?
We have started thinking about these scenarios. We don't have the tech yet behind the scenes. Yeah. So Flow and Power Apps just built their concept of what a solution is. So we'll work with the teams to bring that out, and probably we'll use site designs. So it'll be consistent across how we provision things in modern SharePoint.
Well, yes. Well, site designs plus API support, so that we are able to use that outside of site designs as well. But anyway, so all good. And now there was a question related on: is it planned to have a date-only column type in SharePoint one date? The date time. Okay, that's related on SharePoint fields. So only dates / date time. I think you can actually configure the date time to only show dates and save dates, unless I'm completely mistaken. So that should
you can do that in the column. You can say include time or don't include time.
Yeah, that is true. So will we ever get a better editor on Flow? Well, that's technically for the Flow organization. So let me quickly clarify on that one. So Chaks, or do you want to explain? Chaks, you're from SharePoint. You're not actually from Flow people. So there's a completely different developer engineering team who's responsible for Flow. But what is your role? How does it relate on SharePoint? And where is the flows actually saved? That was one of the questions from Nigel as well.
Yeah. So Flow Designer, we have heard a lot of feedback at Ignite and many other conferences and places. So I work with Flow team, basically building the integration points and how we can get things working in SharePoint specifically out of the box. And then there's a whole lot of team that is devoted to making the Flow portal and all the action UX that you're seeing here. What are the things that happen there? That's a very different team. If you have any feedback, if you can send me in Twitter direct message or link to some documentation, or even if you can put it in the GitHub issues list, and if you or Vesa can point me out to that list, we can send that feedback to the Flow team. They are very, very responsive to customer feedback. So it'll be helpful for us to push that to say that, hey, we need to improve the experience in the editor.
Absolutely. And there's few active social Flow people in social media, like John Levesky is super active, and he is super approachable and interested on your feedback. Now, there was a good question from Nigel Price related on where is this Flow actually stored? So what do we store in a SharePoint and what do we store in the Flow? Can you explain that slightly?
So Flow is stored in Microsoft Flow. There's no question. We don't bring anything to SharePoint, and none of the SharePoint data is pulled into Flow. So because everything is orchestrated, and it's all happening through the Microsoft Flow website. Now, where does that get stored? That depends on your account, region, and all those stuff that I'm not familiar with. But the only thing that we know is that there is a flow associated for this list. Or one or more flows associated for this list. In this case, there is nothing here actually, because if you see the trigger, it's a recurrence trigger. It's not a SharePoint trigger. So this is a flow that gets set up in your Flow account, and then it uses different set of actions based on the trigger that runs. So if the trigger runs every day, this flow is going to run and execute those actions. If the action has a Salesforce connection, it will go do that. If the action has a SQL table insert, it will go do that. So there's really nothing here connection to SharePoint other than the actions that we use.
Makes perfect sense. Now, let's make sure that Matti has a sufficient amount of time. But final question from Eric Cox, because this was such a good question. If you're really good with Flow, do you call yourself as a rapper?
As a rapper?
Yes.
Sure. If you can make the Flow sing for you, of course.
Exactly. So. And
then we'll all say, a star is born.
Yes. So let's actually move Matti to your screen so you can actually start screen sharing. We will stay on the concept of Flow together with SharePoint in Matti's demo as well. So let's see.
You can still hear me?
Yep, all good. And Chaks, if there's any questions related on the rest of the call, you can probably help on the IM window related on that. So thank you. Great demo, great demo. And good to have you back. Really, really great to have you back. Screen sharing starting, loading, three dots. Yes, indeed.
Hey, it's working.
Let's
Great.
see.
I have been using Teams like ages.
Yeah, we use Teams internally as well, but Teams isn't really for broadcasting that suitable yet. We'll get there.
Yeah, it's kind of heavy.
Yes, but Matti, we can see your screen. Just
Great.
take it away. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and greetings from dark and kind of cold Finland. And my name is Matti Paukkonen. I work as a senior architect on Innofactor, which is a Finnish company. And there is my Twitter and a blog address. And today's demo is about turbo boosting your quick chart web parts with Microsoft Flow, which I also blogged last week. And as you may already know, that quick chart web parts got updated before Christmas, at least on my tenants, and now you can use SharePoint list as a data source. And my demo is about updating weekly count of opportunities from Dynamics 365 to a SharePoint list with Flow, and then displaying it with quick chart web part. So it's really a low code solution. Most of the code is like calculating the actual week number. So to the demo then. Here's a simple list. It just has a title field, which I have renamed to a week, and then it has a count field, which is just a number, nothing more. And as you can see, I already have some data added to it, so you can see the chart right away when I add it to a page. So here I have an empty page, and then I just add that quick chart there. Notice the cool section backgrounds also. And just configure it, take the column chart, and then get data from a SharePoint list. And this is kind of cool. It actually displays all the lists which contains supported fields. I think Vesa can confirm. Is it that's really so? And then
Actually, too much out of the box functionality for me, so not enough there. So okay.
So then the data field is count, and it's also displaying just the supported data fields, so number and currency. I think I found out that those are supported. And then the title field, which was renamed as week. I won't do any sorting because it's displaying items in the order they were added, so I can actually get the weeks right. And maybe I add some labels there. So week and number of opportunities. Right. Okay, here's the chart. And next is the turbo boosting section with Flow. So I have already made a flow here, which we can actually take a look at. So first we have a trigger from Dynamics 365, which actually takes all the when entity opportunity is created, it actually fires. Then I initialize the week number. As you can see, here's the most of the code I have created. So I'm not actually 100% sure is this really working in all the cases, but it's kind of close. And then I initialize the case count, which is just an integer. Then a little comparison between weekdays. So current day of the week and what is the day of the week on January 1st, current year. And if the current day of the week is less, then we just increment the week number, and it worked at least better. After that, I get just items from SharePoint list. That was the opportunities, and if the title equals the current week, which is actually the variable here, and then the condition if it returns an empty body, so there isn't a list item which has a title which is current week. I'm creating a new item and adding a count 1. And if the item is found, then I just get the case count added to a variable. Okay, it's not visible. And then increment it by 1 and update the list item. So that's it. That's kind of really simple. Most of the time it took to figure out how to actually count the week number with Flow. So how it's actually working. Let's see the chart first. So there is only opportunities added on week 1. Then I go to the Dynamics CRM, and I already have a new opportunity here. So I add a topic, PNP community call. And budget is like $1 million or something, and just save it. And maybe I add also another one, let's see. And then we need to wait for some time to flow actually kick in. It's not instant. As you can see, I have tested this like 40 minutes ago. But it will take some time so we can actually look at it, what happened then. So calculate the week number, got week number 2 there. This was 0 compared to weekday, so it was false, so nothing were added, and just got the items. And it actually responded an empty body, so I created a new item to the list, which was actually title was week 2, and of course I deleted it after that. Okay, now we can see there are a couple of succeeded flow runs in about 30 seconds ago. So let's see the list or the chart. I just hit refresh. Ooh, and there is a bug.
This is what happens. This is so it was working fine for the rest of the year, right? But then
no, it was working in the morning, I think, but you get the idea.
Yes, yes. Now,
so it's not 100% bulletproof actually. So let's see. I'm checking the list actually.
This has a great amount of actually elements demonstrated without actual code. And to be fair, I think if there is an issue, the issue is within the code part of this one, which was the function in the Azure flow. In the flow, right? So calculation of these things. So if there is an issue there,
or they were both running and the flow wasn't completed yet.
Correct.
So they were running simultaneously, I think.
Yeah.
So
it's not a transactional. That's actually the point. It's not a transactional thing. Now, sure, you could actually change the logic to be slightly different. You could actually collect all of the opportunities as individual entries on a list, and then do a calculation to another list using a flow.
Yeah.
So, to avoid the fact that there's multiple flows running at the same time. But I think this is super cool demo because it shows 3 different applications. It shows the dynamics, it shows the flow, and it shows SharePoint. And what would be the budget estimate for doing all of this custom? That would be insane when you think of it. So you would have to have some sort of a recurrent running Azure web job, which is executing in Azure using Dynamics APIs to connect to there, and polling probably, or maybe there's a webhook support, I don't know, to actually get notified whenever a new opportunity is created, and then replicate that entry directly to SharePoint. There would be quite a few pieces on the design.
And handling all the authentication.
Correct. Yes, that's always the fun part.
Yeah. But this was just something to show that you can display simple data on SharePoint from your background systems if you have some kind of an endpoint to it. So I can think at least some cases where we can use this.
And to be fair, like you said, it doesn't have to be Dynamics. It could be a custom web API, and that could be the part for the developers to write, which will then call, for example, on-premises, or will replicate data from on-premises LOB systems and SQL Azure database, which we then replicate using Flow, or the relevant data, aggregated data using Flow to the SharePoint list, and then we surface that from a SharePoint list, because we don't want to replicate all of the data to SharePoint list, because SharePoint list is not a relational database table, like everybody should always remember, right?
Thanks for putting the page. Yeah, that's about it. It was this simple.
Yep. Do you have the blog post somewhere waiting? Actually, you can paste in. You had this one as a blog post in your own blog, just as a reference.
I can.
Because I know that our live writer David will want to have all of the links because the summary of this call will go live pretty much in 2 minutes immediately after this call.
Okay, I can post it to an IM window.
Excellent. Thank you, Matti.
Yeah.
But really powerful. I'm going to share my screen, so let's move back on there. Super powerful design, and really also shows the simplicity of using the flow together with SharePoint, together with, in this case, Dynamics. And there was no customization needed on SharePoint side. There was no actual customization needed in Flow, even though what is code and what is not code. I think there was a good discussion already in iWindow related on if this is no code, what is no code, or whatever was the term. So
this is more on Excel code.
Exactly.
It's low code, yes, sir.
Low code, yes, that's fair.
Low code, not no code.
Yes. That's a good way of putting that, absolutely. But it actually is a good way to be, and everybody who's in SharePoint Online or Office 365 should be aware of the Flow capabilities so that we're not investing on things which can be more easily done using Flow. And then we're investing the developer resources on more complex scenarios or more integrated scenarios as well. But half code, that's good. So let me actually move on the following slides, and then we can continue with Q&A. That was the intention actually in the new structure of this course, so we're trying to make sure that there's more time for the Q&A. This is slightly in a wrong order. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware. The next, obviously, SP Dev SIG meeting is on not February 24th. Who's writing this stuff? Me. So January 24th, and the next SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group call is on next Thursday. So basically there's a SharePoint Framework, if you're interested on that one, bi-weekly call, and then there's this one which is having a non-SharePoint Framework JavaScript development topics where we go through. Any other questions which we haven't gone through? Any active questions? Any guide on creating Flow custom connectors? That was a question for Chaks. I think there is actually guidance on that.
Yeah, there is documentation from Flow side on creating custom Flow connections. I don't know what you mean by guide, or is it tutorials, or is it guidance?
Yeah,
there's a link.
Yeah, there's a link. Yeah, thank you for that one. That was really fast. Excellent. So that's related on writing a custom connector then and put it in available. Cool. Any other questions related on topic what we have gone through, or any random topics? We're here to answer your questions as well. Is there a way to change the old pages and found ASPX for a 4-page in the modern? Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, there is no. Well, no. Now, let me rephrase this. It depends, are you referencing SharePoint Online or on premises? And on premises, you can do magical stuff to various different ways. But in SharePoint Online, no way for changing page and found ASPX page. So that would be a great input related in the user voice. So pushing on making that happen. Well, I know that there has been a years and years discussion that we should be supporting that in SharePoint Online. Will SPFX be enabled in OneDrive? Actually, so I can't 100% sure confirm this, but my understanding is that the answer is actually no. We're looking into reducing the customization options in OneDrive because the OneDrive is considered almost like a service like Microsoft Teams, not in the same way a service as it was in the past as part of the SharePoint. So that's why I don't think we're planning to enable SPFX in OneDrive sites, and I know that that might be a disappointing news for somebody. I can't be 100% sure on that statement though. Sorry, Chaks, you're beeping. I'm going to mute you. Will modern header offer a none option at some point? Answer is probably actually no, and this really comes down on the design decisions by our senior leadership, which is basically they want to make sure that even though you are using SharePoint or if you're using SharePoint, the SharePoint branding, SharePoint feeling is still present. So there would be something still visible in the page which indicates that you're in SharePoint, because they don't want you to consider SharePoint just as a underlying developer application platform. Now, we understand the ask, because it would be cool that you would be able to fully customize the experience and landing page experience. And there are certain ways of making that happen, but then that would require a DOM level injection and manipulation, which is not always that optimal. We can't actually block that kind of a manipulation, but it's not really recommended as such. But it's a black and white it's not a black and white discussion or recommendation though. But like I said, for the will modern header offer none option at some point, most likely answer is actually no. So that won't be supported in SharePoint Online or in on-premises. When we will be expecting API for content type publishing a REST PowerShell. This is around content type publishing from the content type hub, and the answer is never. For the existing capability, because we're looking into doing a revamp of the whole content type reuse. This relates on the earlier discussion today, which was around the taxonomy service. So there is a completely new organization and team established in SharePoint Engineering, which is around the ECS, so Enterprise Content Management, which will now start thinking and implementing what is the modern documentation and document management and enterprise content management scenarios. And at that point, we already actually said that we will release a new version of the taxonomy APIs for REST. We will release a newer version of the content type hub thinking or sharing content types across the tenants. What will they be? That's a different discussion. I would estimate that around the content type hub we will have explicit new news in the spring event, which would be in May. So there will be still time until we'll get actually stuff announced properly. In the modern experience, are we going more and more flat structure and not subsites? Usually we create subsites, each department with the organization. Answer would be yes in the modern experiences, especially in SharePoint Online, which supports hub sites. So you would be actually creating individual site collections for your departments, and then you will tie them into the hub site, which would be the organization. Now, on SharePoint 2019, story is slightly different, because hub sites are not actually supported in SharePoint 2019, even though the modern experiences are supported. So that's then you need to find the right balance on what are you actually trying to achieve based on the customer requirements. There was content type hub, we talked about that one. Modern pages now show author in the title. Can we turn that off? I'm not sure actually. I don't.
You just have to leave it empty. You can. This optional field. If you don't populate it, it's not visible. If you populate it, it's there by default. So you.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Bert, on that one. Building a custom flow. That's around custom flow connector from Russia function. Cool. Thank you, Chris, on that one. Thank you. Is there a way to track flow history? Is there a flow to track flow history against each list item like designer workflow used to have? Track flow history against each list item. Flag out history. I'm not sure what we're asking here. Do we store the history of an edit on the individual item? Answer is yes, because that's a version history for the item itself.
Well, like in the workflows right now, and like designer workflows, right? You can go to a list item and say workflows for that item, and you can just see the workflows.
Oh, the historical, what was executed. Yeah. I don't think we actually have that for flow, but that would be a question for Chaks or somebody else to answer. I'm not sure if Chaks can actually answer that directly, but I don't think there's a way for doing that right now. Good. I think we all ran out of time. So one thing what I wanted to ask, I know that you probably need to move to another meeting and everything else, but now the final 10 minutes Q&A is this something what we actually want to do in all of the calls? And probably, I can imagine that the answer is probably yes. It's always good to have an open discussion. We've been quite often we've been having a quite busy call, so we're trying to pay more attention this calendar year, on making not too many demos in calls, so making sure that we have 10 minutes 10 minutes time for Q&A in the end as well, and reduce the intro section on the calls as well, so we're not repeating all of 5 slides like we did in the past. So that should help on the call structure and reduce the timing as well. Cool. But thank you everybody for joining. The recording will be out in 24 hours in the Typical SharePoint Dev community channel. We will also release, I think, early next week, then the actual demo videos from Chris's demo and Matti's and Chaks demo as an individual videos. And that requires some additional level of editing and producing. So that's why it takes a slightly longer than actually just the call demo. But the call recording will be out tomorrow with the blog post in the SharePoint Dev blog with the direct links to the demos as well. So if you want to skip and jump to the specific demo in the call. But thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your input. Thank you for once again super active discussion in iWindow. That's super helpful probably for everybody who's joining on these things. And thank you for the people who were doing live demos in here. See you next week potentially in the SharePoint Framework community call. Thank you. Bye-bye.